everyone. Welcome to the Envelopes Emmy Contender Series. I'm Yvonne Villarreal, and today we're talking to Lauren Graham, our favorite fast-talking mom Lorelei from Gilmore Girls. She reprised her role for Netflix's revival of the series to the delight of fans everywhere. And we'll be taking your questions as well, so shoot them over in our comment section. I was really trying to go for saying it as fast as Lorelei, but I can't do it.
That was pretty fast.
How do you do it?
I don't know. I have spoken about this before, but I think when you're performing a really great piece of writing, it kind of tells you. I remember during that time when I was first doing the show, I'd go on auditions for something else, and inevitably they'd say, "Tell her she doesn't have to talk that fast." And I was like, I know. This is only for this. This is what I do here. But I'm sort of speedy, I guess, in my demeanor, whatever. But there's a kind of a joy and that language does something to you. It's really invigorating.
Did you have to learn when to take your breaths, or it just sort of came naturally?
I don't know. I mean, the show evolved so much. If you go back to watch the pilot, it wasn't at that pace.
No, it wasn't there yet.
And then I would say for the first year or two, it was sort of mainly my character or the banter between Lorelei and Rory, and then eventually the entire town just took the same amount of coffee, I guess. And so it definitely requires more preparation than most TV. I liken it more to theater. You've long speeches, long sentences that require some kind of, sculpting, and you have to be prepared. It's not. There are some shows and some scenes you can learn right then and kind of keep them fresh. This requires preparation, and it's not fun to, in addition to all the other things that tend to go on in a scene, we do a lot of one-ers, and so you don't want to be the reason we have to go, 25 more times.
Right.
So you definitely have to show up knowing your lines.
What's it like to sort of be on the other side of it now? For so many years, you guys were asked about whether this show would ever come back. Would you be open to it, a movie, something? And to now have some time where this has been out there.
Yeah.
What has that been like?
It's really wonderful and a little bittersweet. It was fun in some ways to have that question out there, because what if? What if we could? What if we did? What would that feel like? What would that be? And it was such an incredible, joyous rush to do it, to be back, to see the people, to have a greater sense of what this has meant to me in my life, in my career, to just be able to feel thankful and enjoy it, So that was was the most fun time I ever had. So if that's the last fun time I'll ever have, I will be bummed out. So it's been hard actually since then to look at other material and imagine that it will meet that bar,
right.
And that's always been a challenge. I mean, that character and that writing, that creator, Amy Sherman Palladino, I just kind of have a great connection and a real similar taste, and it's like finding a partner in life. That's a person who I've created so much with. I don't know who my next work husband's going to be. And he or she is hard to find.
Yeah. Do you still have that email from 2014 where she said she was thinking of pitching to streaming services?
Oh, yeah.
You're going to frame that or give it to
That's
the
a good
Smithsonian
idea.
or something?
Well, the problem is there were so many conversations and it had so many possibilities. And I was just thinking today, there was another conversation years ago when she was in earnest trying to get it made as a movie, a feature film, and it's just one thing that's interesting when I look back at the history of the show is how we've continued to rise through a certain amount of being underestimated. The feature film never happened because Amy was told it just wasn't a wide enough audience. It's women, you know, it's really just young women. They don't go to the movies. And I know. And it's hard because the show's so happy and it does appeal to young people and families and stuff. But I think in that there's always been a certain amount of you know, it hasn't, people are always surprised when they see it to see how smart the writing is and how complex the characters are. It is in sort of a fairy tale land, but that's deceptive, I think. You know, there's so much more to it. So, yeah, so I miss it.
You can never delete that email.
No. But now what do I, it's just the thing of, well, now what email am I going to never
You're
delete?
like waiting
you know?
for the next email, yeah.
Well, yeah. I haven't finished enjoying, you know, the fact that we got to do it.
Yeah. At any point, either in all that talk or the process of shooting, did you ever think to yourself, I don't know if this is a good idea. Like, should we be doing this?
No.
Was there ever?
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
I, of course, worried about how it would be perceived. I remember sitting in some meeting before we'd started, and somebody said, you know, I love the show, but, you know, 40 minutes with commercial interruption, you can kind of reset your brain to get ready to hear that much dialogue again. You know, in 90 minutes, can people handle it? And I knew no matter what we did, somebody was going to feel it wasn't what they wanted, or they wanted more or less or of whatever. And I'm used to that as an actor. None of that is kind of where I can live and still do a good job. You know, everybody criticizes everything, but to me it felt like the show grown up as it had to. We couldn't have gone back and done CW ready episodes. You know, it had to feel bigger, and it had to a little bit have some depth and sadness and darkness, because that's what you need in a story of that length. And it was true to where we were. Yeah.
And I remember talking to John Stamos ahead of Fuller House coming back, and he was saying, you know, I grappled with it because for so long I was trying to shed Uncle Jesse, get people to see me as someone else. But then I was like, this is the guy that put me on the map. Like, how could I not come back to him?
Yeah.
Like, how would you say you felt the same way for a period of, I need to show I'm more than Lorelei, but I also I loved playing her too?
I think it was the perfect amount of time to have had all those thoughts and to have nothing but gratitude and happiness to get to do it again. When we finished the show the first time, so much was confusing. You know, we didn't have Amy and Dan. I think Alexis and I had worked at a level for an amount of time that we weren't sure how we felt about continuing. And I remember feeling, if I stayed and the show kind of went downhill, I was more afraid of that at that point. And I was, whatever I was, maybe just turned 40 or something, and I had that kind of ambition, and I better, you know, clock is ticking, I better get out there. And then I got out there and I did, you know, a couple of movies that were fun. I don't know, I did this Broadway show that was sort of successful. I sort of had these other experiences that I thought were what I wanted, and things, you know, to varying degrees measured up or didn't. And I thought, oh, it's very difficult to be in something and understand what it is at the time. In a acting career, you maybe get one or two of, you know, roles that you're proud of, and the world has changed so greatly. You do something, it stays around forever. I mean, it can get replaced by the next thing, but I think the first time I realized that was when I got pulled over for speeding one time, and he was like in the process of writing me a ticket, and then he goes, "Hey, bad Santa?" And I was like, "Yeah," and he goes, "Go ahead." And I was like, wow. So it has its upside and its downside to be known for things. And And I didn't get that then, you know. I didn't get that once you do something, it sort of stays around. And thank goodness it's something I like this much.
I was hoping you were going to say Caroline in the City or something. My fave. Still waiting for that reboot.
Oh my gosh. That was also my favorite too, because I look back at that. I was so ignorant of how show business worked. I walked in, I did a funny voice. I was still in like drama school in my mind, you know. I was like, I'm just gonna talk like that. I don't know. I just feel like she's, and they were all like, what are you doing? And yet, and it was fine. But just the kind of bravery I had then to kind of create characters, and I didn't, you know, well, I wasn't gonna get a job. That was how I went. And now I go into things like, you know, is Lisa Kudrow up for it? Well, then never mind, or whatever it is, you know. So I think you have to really appreciate each time you're in for what it is, you know.
How was it being back on that set? Because I remember when I was on the set for the revival, I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And I wanted to take pictures of everything.
Yeah.
But you couldn't. But
right. I know.
I'm not you.
They were so worried about secrecy and privacy and.
But did a feeling wash over you?
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, the other difference now is I'm just at a different time of understanding what I got to do. I was so in the mindset of succeeding and being driven in my career. I wasn't thinking about how lucky I was, and now I do. I think about it all the time. And so there was a much greater emotional sense. You know, back then I was like, okay, I got this job, I'm doing this, I got to learn these lines, blah, blah, I got to do this talk show or whatever. And this time it was probably oppressive to those around me because I was like, I just want to say, Taylor Dozy, thank you so much, you know. And he was like, what? I was like, I really appreciated each of our players, you know, and the fact that we got to be there again and walking on any of those sets I was nervous too, which I don't remember being back in the day. That first table read, I was shaking, you know. I thought, what if it comes out of my mouth and everything's gone? You know, something, there was some kind of worry that, what if I couldn't connect to it again or something? And then I did, but it was really emotional.
Which set were you most excited to visit once again?
Well, there are just ones that bring back these memories, you know. I would say the most memorable scenes I had were in my parents' house, you know, around that dinner table. And it's memorable both for what happened there and also how long they took or whatever, you know. Ed Herman would be like, they got to get me out by 11, so we got to go. And I, even playing that character the first time, walking into that house always made me feel like a child again, you know, and the fact that they had reconstructed the house differently, just slightly differently. Things I remembered, oh, you got to take a sharp corner here because the camera can't see you, you know, just technical things were different. So the same but different, and I wrote about this in my book, but also, you know, you'd walk out and there's the Ellen stage. That's not where that used to be back then, you know. So it was a very strange thing because they replicated it all so well. Luke's too, you know, there's a lot of memories in Luke's, the town hall, always hot in there, always, I'm always, you know, but that's what I mean about appreciating somebody like Michael Winters. You know, he gives these long speeches and I don't know, it was just really a blast.
I would have tried taking that dining room table.
I got a Dragonfly Inn sign. You heard it here first. I didn't ask permission for that one.
Is it hung up somewhere?
It's huge, so it's in our garage, but it's something that greets me when I come home at the end of the day.
Well,
so
when you start your inn, you can just
repurpose
it.
Can you imagine? Lorelei's Dragonfly Inn. Graham's making an appearance. Maybe she'll cook your pancakes. That'll be my next 10 years.
Well, and you were writing your book in the process.
Yeah.
Talk about, you know, just what that even looked like. Were you just constantly?
Yes, I was. We had an AD, a couple of them, but I, for some reason, you know, they'd call me and I'd like say, this is my computer, and I'd just like leave it right there. And he'd be like, this is making me crazy. You need this. And he'd like push it back. And it just didn't even become a computer after a while. It was just like that extension of my hand, and I had to be like shoving it under couches and behind pillows and stuff. I mean, I've always done well under pressure. I arguably do better, tragically for me. And I'd had this idea to do this book of essays, and then when the show was actually happening, that brought the deadline up. And originally the show wasn't going to come out until the first week of January. So I had until then, and then it was Christmas, so I had until then, and then it was Thanksgiving, and so it was really, really crazy.
Did it make it harder to like appreciate the moments you were having, or?
No, it's honestly, that's what doing the original show felt like. I mean, we worked the most ridiculous hours, and we were shooting on film. It was just a different time, and so I can do that. I can work a really long day, and also still, back then it was probably more, I'd be reading something or just something to try to, fill the time between setups. But there's a kind of concentration you can have when there really is no choice but to do your work. That was kind of, I don't need to live that way every day, but it was, I don't know, it's just kind of part of the magic of that time.
Well, and I know Amy and Dan had like just piles and piles of index cards of what they were mapping out.
Yeah.
Talk about what your conversations with them were like about the journey Lorelei was going to be taking in these installments.
I really trusted them with it. We talked about wild. She kept saying to me, but this is Amy, she's very, for some reason the word that comes to me is like scrapbooky, which is not what I mean. She does not scrapbook, but she sort of says one thing and then leaves you with it for a minute, and she just kept saying, have you read Wild? I was like, yeah, I told you. Why do you keep asking me this? And so that was something. And then we talked about, if Luke and Lorelei were going to end up together. In the original show, I felt very strongly that it shouldn't be a wedding. It shouldn't be a traditional, and then they walk down the aisle and everything, because I feel a sense of responsibility to our people, yes, the show is a fantasy in many ways, but it's also such an original piece, and these characters are so interesting and original. I just didn't think what's a different way for two people to be happy together, and I loved what it was. Somebody said to me, ugh, it was, a wedding, like, isn't that too, do we really want that for them? And I felt you did. After all that, after all that time, and after this journey, and that the fact is, it was a Stars Hollow wedding. It was fairy lights and dancing girls and kind of a dream sequence, almost like you'd have in a musical, and so that made complete sense to me. And I was very concerned about how we were going to address Ed and his passing, and it made sense to me. I had just finished Parenthood, where we lost our patriarch in that story.
Still recovering from that.
Me too.
Yeah.
But this show has always presented these, and yes, it's in fun language, or this wacky town or whatever, but it really presents these iconic moments in particular women's lives, I think, and how they deal with them. I know some people wanted Rory to be more of a like slam dunk success at the beginning. It made sense to me. She's just in her early 30s. She hasn't quite found, she hasn't quite found her feet underneath her. And so it all just made sense to me.
And Kelly sort of gave a talk, right, about Herman before you guys started shooting, or like she gathered everyone round or something? Because that the painting.
Oh my gosh, it was just, but
huge,
like I know,
and you feel his presence.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
Well, the first day we walked onto that set was really rough. All of us together, because Kelly also, she hadn't been there for the first couple of weeks. They put all her stuff together, so we'd been working, and maybe Alexis and I had I don't even think we'd had a scene in there. I think we all came in the day, saw the big painting, sat, it was emotional. And Kelly had been a very close friend of his, close to the family. And she just kind of took a moment and she said, Ed, we know you're here. We love you. You know, she just said something. And she said, let us know. Let us know if you want to say hello or something like that. And that day, like a light went out in the middle of the scene, and she said, "Thanks, Ed."
Oh,
So,
I love that.
so you know, she's just such a special person in my life, and yeah, the stuff we got to address together as those characters felt really gratifying as well.
Yeah, because what was it like to see Emily's journey in this process too? I mean,
I think she's just like never been better. I mean, she's so fantastic, and I always talk about one of the things I really admire about her as an actor is her restraint. She doesn't need you to like Emily, and thusly we like adore her. You know, she doesn't. She shows a little window here and there of what, you know, that vulnerability might be, and so this was just something, you know, that gave her all these other colors. She's wearing my jeans. She's giving away the furniture.
what was it like seeing Kelly in the jeans?
I mean, hilarious. First of all, she's the only person in the universe who's like, she's aged 10 years and lost 20 pounds, and like she's such a tiny little, you know, powerhouse, and I've literally in life never seen her wear jeans, so the whole thing was just hilarious. And also she just still had her same, you know, she wasn't like, she just still had her same, like she could have been in pearls or my concert t-shirt. It's just she's still Emily. And so it was just really fun.
Well, because so often, you know, when we talk about Gilmore Girls, we talk about the relationship between Lorelei and Rory. But some of the most striking moments from the revival were the scenes between Lorelei and Emily. Particularly starting off with that kitchen fight scene.
Yeah.
And what was, you know, just talk about exploring that. And did it feel like it was you in that moment, or did it feel like it was Lorelei?
Honestly, they've overlapped at this point to a confusing degree. But it also, that whole sequence of getting drunk at the wake, waking up, climbing over the guy in the wheelchair, giving this horrible wrong memory speech that is completely so the worst thing I could possibly say. It just felt like places we hadn't gotten to go before, and I think again in terms of what I love about the show, it makes more sense to me that Lorelei's having a conflict with her mom than her daughter. Her and her daughter now have basically worked things out and can truly be friends without, you know, without me feeling like I need to take care of her. It's really that relationship between Lorelei and Emily that needed more attention and more healing, because now they just have each other.
And they've gotten a lot closer in the midst of all that. And how about like the therapy scenes where for like some of the few moments we have some silence in the Gilmore Girls world, which is a rarity too. But acting alongside her in those moments.
Well, it's so many things, because what we haven't seen those characters do very much is speak their inner monologue, you know, and that's where Lorelei has gotten stuck. You know, she never really, to me, what A Year in the Life is about is, this is what happens if you don't grow up. You know, if you stay in one place, and that's why in the musical, you know, and Sutton Foster sings that Unbreakable song, I think it pivots her on this journey because she's looking at, in a way, someone who is admitting, you know, we're all vulnerable. You're not, you can't do this by yourself, this life, you know. And I think to a certain degree, she hasn't, you know, she just hasn't grown up and hasn't accepted this man in her life, really, not really, you know, and hasn't kind of made peace with her mother, and it just sends that whole journey going. But yes, the stuff with Kelly was just I wish we were in a scene right now. I just couldn't get
Be
enough
right
of
here.
it. It's such
Yes.
a rich relationship, and I do, and Amy has said this in other press, so I'm not telling tales, but it was really about her and her mom, and something they did together, and so it was very personal, and that's what this whole show felt like to me. It was the old show, but even more personal and more emotional for us all.
Could you just sense like how happy Amy was to be back in it?
Yeah.
When I was there, it was like
Yeah.
you could see like she was running around, but you could see how happy she was.
That's how I felt as well.
Yeah.
And it also, I think, for our relationship and maybe even how she perceives, working with actors, I'd worked a couple years, but I was newish, and she had never done a 1-hour show before, and we had more of a traditional kind of boss-employee relationship. It would never have occurred to me I asked her about certain things, but it was very much her vision. And this time really felt like we were a company, like a theater company or something, and we discussed things in a more peer-to-peer kind of way, and made it more fun. And I said, this is so much fun to really feel a sense of, because I do feel a sense of ownership of that experience, that character, and that we could kind of, be working together like that. And she said, we should have always done it like this. It was just, we both had a same vision, for what we wanted to make, and it was really fun to just communicate about it.
Well, and you got to do something new too with Lorelei, in that in the fall installment, when she's going out trying to have her own wild adventure, she gives this, she calls up Emily to give this anecdote of what she hoped she had said all along about her dad. Was that invigorating for you? And talk about, is this something you pushed for with Amy? I want something like this?
No. But she had remembered what we had discussed in the original show was just some of the ways that her writing was different than most TV. And I said, you should write just a really long speech. You should, I don't even know what the longest monologue in television is, but this world, again, this sort of heightened, slightly theatrical world you could have that. You could have, I wondered if that would be fun for her to really just write a long monologue. And she kept saying, there's another thing, because I didn't read Fall for the longest time. I think the idea,
I don't want it to end.
I didn't want it to end. What if it wasn't exactly what I wanted it to be? Because there were so many sort of balls in the air, and that episode was going to really bring them home, and I really was afraid of it. And she kept saying, remember when we used to talk about that monologue idea, and what would justify it, and what could make that make sense, And she's like, you're going to do that. And I was afraid of that too. And then when I, read it,
Tears.
I bawled through the whole episode. But what I love about it is it's really just a girl having a memory of being younger, and just a small kind of, it wasn't like, and then we went, it was a tiny little thing her dad had done for her that meant so much, and it really is, to me, what I love, I've always loved about the show, the writing, the idea. It's these little tiny things that mean so much, and it's, nothing happens. I was describing the show to somebody before I'd done it, and they were like, wait, do you fight crime? I was like, what? No, we're just people. We just, and whoever it was like, that's never going to last. You can't have that on TV. Literally thought we had to fight crime, because otherwise, which by the way is a wonderful idea, mother-daughter crime fighters.
Yes.
But so the challenge with that speech, in particular, with the show in general, with that in particular, is it meant so much to me. It was the answer to that awful story from the beginning, and I knew we're outside, we're in Malibu, I just didn't want to grind it down and have to do it many times, which meant I had to be rock solid, prepared, which had its own downside because there was nothing about it that I wanted to get stale, and I did something I'd never done before, which is just in a flat, no emotion way. I recorded it. I recorded just the words, and I would play it in the car.
Oh, wow.
Just so it was in my, mind. If we were in New York, I don't think I would have had to do that because you can spend time with it. I just wanted to spend time with it as much as I could so that when we got there, it could just be free. There's a terrible thing that can happen at times when you want to be the most open, where your body just goes, no thanks, I really don't want to go there. And so I just had all kinds of, done this long enough now that I was ready for whatever, but my hope was just to have it, do it a couple times and be done, and that's what happened. Because it was one take.
Yeah.
There's nothing. I mean, you can cut to Emily's side of the phone, but for my purposes, it's one take, and yeah.
Well, and in that same script, we finally get those 4 words.
Yeah. Which everyone's real satisfied by and happy about. So,
were you hesitant to turn the page? They
were never written down. They were not on any page, and in fact, there was a dummy scene that 95% of our people thought was real. Where
what were the words there?
It was Rory's on a train, and she looks up, and she smiles or something, and you don't see who she sees. Somebody says something, but it still had a cliffhanger kind of aspect to it. And I remember somebody in wardrobe being like, "Well, and then we have to do that Rory train scene," and I was like, "You guys, it's not a scene. It's not the real, And it was, so that was funny. And then, she'd never told me the words. I didn't know what they were until we were halfway through shooting, and she told me.
Were you like, huh?
Yeah. I said, wait, what? She said, yeah, it's blah, 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 blah. I still can't even say it. I've been so traumatized. And I was like, it sort of made sense the longer I thought about it.
Are you fine with it? Or are you like, I wanted something else for her, or what?
I'm so in it. I just really try not to judge it at all. It all felt great to me. I was more concerned with, I think she wanted it to feel this sort of suspended moment, you don't know what happens next. My instinct was to have a bigger reaction, of joy, or it just something about the, filmmaking of it was just what she wanted it to be, which is kind of, and then, the screen goes black or whatever, and people go, what? So, but I think the part of what's smart about that is, I don't know, or what I like about it better is I like that better than, and then you'll never hear from any of these people ever again.
Yeah.
I think
there's an open-endedness.
Yeah,
to it.
And for something that, even if it's dissatisfying to some people, it keeps the characters alive, and I think that's smart.
How many times did you guys do that scene? Say those words, or say the words?
That had a couple more pieces to it, but that wasn't. And of course, the way these things always work, you're not doing it on the last day. It was in the middle of, my family was there. It was around my birthday. So, those things that everybody else is waiting for probably aren't our biggest days. It's but it was, everybody had to sign a non-disclosure, and that was really the fear, was given the world we live in now, we just didn't want things to get out, before people had a chance to see the show.
And now, how often are you asked who's the baby daddy?
I am asked. I never have an answer.
But is that the central question?
I think they know who it is. I just go with the Wookiee, because why not?
I like that. We're going to take a few questions. You mentioned Amy Sherman-Palladino took improv of yours during A Year in the Life. What was it?
I don't know. I would have to watch the show, which, as everyone knows, is going to take me another decade. But it was in my house, and I'm walking from the kitchen to the living room, and it's a part of a list of things. I will have this answer for you the next time we're here. I don't know.
Any word on another season?
No. I think if there was word, we would have heard that word by now.
You don't have any emails?
None.
Okay.
And in fact, she's on Mrs. Maisel and pouring herself into that.
Any chance of you going on that?
I said to her, there's a character that I sort of do I don't know, because I haven't seen enough of this, since they're still making the show. I love that time period in New York, and it sort of goes back to Caroline in the City, your favorite show. There's this thing, it's from like a Judy Holliday movie. Amy has me do it for her for fun. It's like, it's this character, and she's a New Yorker, but it's like she has me say, I think it's in the show, hooray for the Goldbergs. Is that in the show? But so she's like, and that's, you could be that, like I'm a cigarette girl at like if I did that show, I would want to do something of the time and do something quite different than, I don't want to just be rocking in like, hey guys, anybody got a coffee? Like I can't, but
we need to make it happen in some way.
I just love any like time period New York.
You're there?
Yeah.
Would you rather live in Stars Hollow with the Gilmores or Berkeley with the Bravermans?
Guys, come on. Stars Hollow seems like I seem more fun there. I feel like my wardrobe's louder, the coffee's free, I know everybody, so Stars Hollow.
When are we gonna get the Parenthood?
I don't know.
Nothing?
No.
No emails on that either.
No emails.
People are really, really bummed out about Linda from HR.
Oh.
Can you put it on YouTube for us or something?
I don't think legally I can. I haven't seen that either. I heard it's really good. It was always quite an ambitious premise and kind of cable-y. And, pilot season is like a very intense dating game. It's like, if it's not love at first sight for both people,
right,
it's okay. It's okay. But what I really love is I got to do something pretty different. And it was a great idea. It's just, I can see why on a network you'd feel like it's one of those shows you really have to have seen the episode before, and so it was worth a try.
Maybe some other time. We're gonna end with a lightning round.
Okay.
Be ready. Channel your inner Lorelei.
Okay.
Last show you binge watched?
The Americans, but Feud.
Feud.
Yeah.
Not Handmaid's Tale?
No, I'm saving it all.
Okay.
Yeah.
What show that you love would you want to sit and watch someone else enjoy for the first time?
Well, I've done this. I have more movies than shows with broadcast news. A couple times I showed that to May for the first time, and some of the 80s movies that were really important to me are very fun to show.
Okay. If you could go back and be on any classic show, what would it be?
Friends? Friends, probably,
Friends.
yeah.
What genre would you like to try?
Now I really just want to be doing half-hour comedy now in television, and I at some point would really love to do a play again of any kind. But for some reason, like this, because I've gotten to do so much in the contemporary space, I'm really drawn to, I loved Feud so much, and I loved Downton Abbey. I'm very drawn to things not of this time for some reason.
Walter White or Tony Soprano?
To do what with?
I like this follow-up. Whatever you want.
I mean, you've got so many complications in both cases. I don't know. Tony? I don't know. I need more information.
What was your first acting job, and what did you learn from it that you're still using now?
Well, my first paid acting job was, crazily enough, playing a pregnant teenager in a Planned Parenthood training video where they were it was a very mild thing, but it was sort of how to counsel a young girl who comes in and is pregnant. I was wearing my stepmother's like maternity dress, and you know, I don't know what I learned from that. Pillows don't look real as a pregnancy stomach. I mean, you know, some of my other first professional work was as an apprentice at a summer theater, which is, you know, like painting fences and cleaning bathrooms, and then like being like, you know, in the background of Oklahoma. And I remember someone saying, you know, do every job like you're getting paid, you know, like you're getting like what you deserve or better, you know, and that got me through a lot of pretty crummy unpaid jobs. I was like, just pretend.
On that note, let me pretend. Thanks so much for joining us here, and Lauren, thanks for coming by.
Thank you.
If you want to check out more of our Emmy chats, head over to latimes.com. Thanks, guys.
Thanks. That was so fun.